Good morning for those just coming in. Thank you for being here. It is 10 o'clock. It is time to get started. I want to thank you for taking the time and joining this training today. My name is Jody Weiner. I am the Learning and Development Specialist here at Sacramento Steps Forward. I always like to start with a little bit of gratitude. I firmly believe, and I know, having sat in the seat where you are in direct service, this work cannot happen without you. I also recognize and understand how challenging it is to get your work done and expand your capacity to help resolve homelessness. So thank you for taking the time to be here and for interacting with us in this way. I am going to start a welcome poll in a moment here as my tech is always fun as we begin these trainings. Today's training is document readiness. So if you can, please just take a moment to answer the poll. And while you're doing that, I will remind you that these trainings are required for new CAS Assessor. When I say these trainings, I'm talking about the CAS Assessor training series. We do have two more that will end mid-June. After the training series are complete, all the trainings are done, you will get a congratulations email as well as links to complete our CAS Assessor certification quiz. Right now, there's about 30 questions on there. Shouldn't take more than 45 minutes to complete. And that will open up the assessments and the access to the CAS agency, which we've talked about throughout the training series. Additionally, I will remind everybody, as we move through the slide deck, you will see slides. Oh, great, I see. There's so many new CAS assessors. Wonderful. Yay. Thank you for answering the poll. I appreciate it. So as we move through the slide deck, I will remind you, you're going to see these little yellow bookmarks. And those bookmarks are key points to kind of pay attention. In today's training, they'll pop up as poll questions as well. These are on the certification quiz. So this is really a helpful point for attention and to come back to. You will get a link, hopefully by the end of the week, to this recorded material as well as the presentation slides. We encourage you to use the emojis and to use the Q&A feature exclusively for any questions you may have. We use the Q&A to help capture your questions so that sometimes we can answer them live. We will have a break about 40 minutes in, and then we'll come back, complete the training, and we will have a Q&A section at the end. And with that, we can get started on our presentation. Today, we are working through the post-assessment training and document readiness. So what happens after the assessments are completed? We get to learn today from Elizabeth Rios and Giselle Escalante, and together they will help describe and apply, help you to describe and apply the various document readiness requirements. They will help you to better understand and interpret the program eligibility summary. They'll get into some sections around the priority list, implementing skills, and as well, navigating some programs and resources. And that's about the extent of my time with you. So thank you so much. And I will turn this over to Giselle.
Good morning. My name is Giselle Escalante, and I will be going over assessments. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the Domestic Violence Referral Specialist for SSF. Next slide, please. Oh, very quiet. Can you hear me a little better now?
A little bit. How about we try again? A little more volume if possible.
Okay, let me see if I can adjust that.
Sure.
Okay, is that any better? Okay,
So
perfect.
much better. Thank you.
Sorry, sometimes it just likes to fight me. I don't know why. Okay, so we're going to be going over the assessments, which includes the current living situation, the crisis assessment, the housing conversation tool, and the individualized support plan, and lastly, the case conferencing tool. Next slide, please. So the assessments in HMIS, the assessments with the green background were designed to document changes in the client's circumstances over time. Assessments with the blue background are more complex. Most of the assessments here are listed CAS assessments, which were created to facilitate the client's journey toward permanent housing. CAS assessments can only be accessed and completed in a program with the new CAS agency. Next slide, please. So the Housing Conversation Tool and ISP, formerly the VI-SPDAT, FYI, and LEAP assessment. So it's all been merged into one. So this is used with households at risk of or currently experiencing homelessness. It determines a client's eligibility for CAS-participating housing options, rapid rehousing, PSH, other permanent housing. ISP is used to develop a client-led, housing-focused, individualized service plan, which identifies ideal housing options. Clients are prioritized based on their vulnerability and housing barriers, the COC general priority lists. And I would like to highlight too on that first chunk of information, the at risk. We really want to make sure that everybody is doing an HCT, even if a client is not actively homeless. There are programs and housing development folks who work specifically with at risk. So please make sure that you are getting all of your clients connected, even if they're not currently unhoused. Next slide, please. So the CAS Assessor Best Practice Guide. It's a comprehensive manual and best practice guide for CAS assessors using the Housing Conversation tool. This covers information in more detail than this training. It's intended to be a resource, especially for new staff. It includes a service decision matrix and post-assessment examples. And there is a link in this slide deck that I highly recommend clicking on and exploring in your own free time. Next slide, please. So essential elements of the housing referral process. We have access, assessment, prioritization, which includes the housing conversation tool scores, and to verify the required documents. 4 is CAS housing program has an opening. 5 is going to be the confirm client interest and referral submission. So the orange section is going to be on the CAS assessors. The blue section is when we're going to be getting an opening, and then the green section is when SSF steps in, finds a client that is eligible, and moves them forward. Next slide, please. Referral populations in CAS. Please note that these are not guaranteed solid, concrete definitions, but kind of just a guideline for potential referrals. Next slide, please. So there's homeless category 1, which is literally homeless. An individual or family who lacks a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence, meaning has a nighttime residence that is a public or private place not meant for human habitation, or is living in a publicly or privately operated shelter designed to provide temporary living arrangements, including congregate shelters, transitional housing, hotels and motels paid for by charitable organizations or by federal, state, and local government programs. So that does mean that if a client is in emergency housing, transitional housing, or a shelter program, they still qualify as literally homeless, even though they are not sleeping on the street. And the third is exiting an institution where they have resided for 90 days or less, and who resided in an emergency shelter or place not meant for human habitation immediately before entering that institution. And there is a link for HUD definitions in there as well to go over these in more detail. But next slide, please. So this is going to be homeless category 4. So this is fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. This is going to be a 3-part eligibility. They must be fleeing, attempting to flee, domestic violence, human trafficking, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or other dangerous or life-threatening conditions that relate to violence against the individual or family member, including a child, that has taken place within the individual or family's primary nighttime residence, or has made the individual or family afraid to return to their primary nighttime residence, and has no other residence, and lacks the resources or support networks to obtain other permanent housing. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, Jody, can you go back one more? I just want to make one more note. Thank you so much. If they meet this definition and they're already in a HUD subsidized housing program, like rapid rehousing, PSH, a housing voucher, and they qualify for a VAWA emergency transfer, they can still access that. Just want to make that clear that people under Category 4 have a lot of different protections within VAWA and HUD. Next slide, please. So at risk of homelessness. So this is an individual who has an income below 30% median income, does not have sufficient resources or support networks immediately available to prevent them from moving into an emergency shelter or into homelessness, is exiting a publicly funded institution or system of care, such as healthcare facility, mental health care facility, and next slide, please. Meets one of the following conditions. Has moved because of economic reasons 2 or more times during the 60 days immediately preceding applying for homelessness assistance, is living in the home of another because of economic hardship. This is a big one. I know we see it a lot. Has been notified in writing that their right to occupy their current housing or living situation will be terminated within 21 days of the date of application for assistance. Due diligence needs to be done to confirm that they will lose their housing without one-time assistance, i.e. eviction notice. Lives in a hotel or motel that is not paid for by charitable organizations or by federal, state, or local government programs for low-income individuals. Lives in a single-room occupancy or efficiency apartment unit with more than 2 people, or lives in a larger housing unit in which there reside more than 1.5 people per room. Obviously, there can't be a half of a person, but if that averages out to overcrowding, then that can be considered at risk, and they can qualify for at risk of homelessness and receive services within CAS. Next slide, please. So CAS housing program types. Next slide, please. So this is supportive services only. SSO projects allow recipients to provide supportive services such as conducting outreach to sheltered and unsheltered individuals and families, and providing referrals to other housing or other necessary services. Next slide, please. Transitional housing to rapid rehousing, THRRH, provides temporary housing with supportive services with the goal of interim stability and support to successfully move to and obtain permanent housing. Participants in a transitional housing project must have a signed lease, sublease, or occupancy agreement with the following requirements: an initial term of up to 1 month, or at least 1 month, automatically renewable upon expiration except by prior notice by either party, a maximum term of 24 months, and an eligibility requirement Category 1 or Category 4 homeless. Next slide, please. Rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing is a permanent housing project that provides short-term, up to 3 months, and medium-term, 4 to 24 months, tenant-based rental assistance and supportive services to households experiencing homelessness. Rapid rehousing programs can serve some at-risk populations, so definitely want to make sure that we're still screening folks even if they aren't literal. Next slide, please. Permanent housing with or without services. Permanent housing, PH, is a community-based housing model, the purpose of which is to provide housing without a designated length of stay. Permanent housing program participants must be the tenant on a lease or sublease, which must have an initial term of at least 1 year, be renewable for a minimum term of 1 month, be terminable only for cause. And again, at-risk folks are still eligible for permanent housing. Oh, thank you. Just want to check the chat there. So really, please make sure that we're screening everybody, because if a client, for example, is in a rapid rehousing program and is not doing so hot in there, we want to make sure that we give them the option to transition to a permanent housing if that's going to be what supports them most. So make sure, always screening, always asking. Next slide. So permanent supportive housing. Permanent supportive housing, PSH, is permanent housing in which housing assistance, long-term leasing or rental assistance, and supportive services are provided to assist households with at least one member with a disability in achieving housing stability. For permanent housing, permanent supportive housing, the client must be the head of household. So it must be the head of household that has a disability. So unfortunately, if the client has a child with a disability, they would not qualify for permanent supportive housing at this time. And the eligibility requirements, Category 1, Category 4, a disability that is documented, and documented chronicity. Next slide, please. So we are going to have a poll. Which program type is for clients who need short-term assistance? Permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, permanent housing with services, A, B, or C? And just for reference, all of this information will be recorded, and you should receive a link to all of this information by the end of the week. So no worries if you get it wrong, and no worries if some of this is new information for you. And we have 94% with rapid rehousing, and that is correct. Rapid rehousing is a short-term program for about 3 months, or a medium-length program, 6 to 24 months. So good job, all of you who got that right, and no worries if you didn't. That's why we're here, and that's why we're teaching. So program eligibility processor. Next slide, please. Program eligibility tool is important to show what programs. Oh, actually, I'm such a liar. I got too excited. It is Elizabeth's turn. So previous slide, please, Jody. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth. I am the General CAS specialist, referral specialist here. So as Giselle just went over all of the programs, the biggest question is how do we get to these programs? What's the eligibility to be able to get into these programs? So this is kind of the process of how that works. Next slide, please. So we have a program eligibility tool. So right after you complete the HCT assessment, there's this big page that pops up at the end. And it's kind of with a whole bunch of names and numbers, and it's kind of confusing if you take a glare at it and right after you complete one. So what this is relevant is that it has relevant scores. It gives context for the next steps of how to get into a program as programs within the CAS agencies. It's a list of different programs that are within CAS, and it gives a number right next to these of what the eligibility is for that the client scored to be able to get into these programs. So that's the program eligibility. It clearly gives providers a visibility of which programs the client needs eligibility for. Next slide, please. Okay, so there was a question earlier about where is the housing conversation tool assessment. So there's a great screenshot is that you go to the client's profile under assessments, you'll see assessment histories or assessments. Usually if it hasn't been completed, you'll see a housing conversation tool assessment. In this case, it's already been completed. So you'll go to the assessment history, and right next to the housing conversation tool, there's that little that circle of eligibility. And we're actually going to go through this ourselves together. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to go through this together to see how we can access this and kind of what each number means for these programs. Okay, perfect. So here we are as normal as you would normally see when you enter HMIS is normally you would click the client. So we're going to do mother test. And I'll go ahead and type it in like if we're going through it together. We're going to search and then we're going to do this first one. So then we're going to go under the assessments tab, go down to the housing conversation tool and go to that eligibility that we had seen in that previous screenshot. So this is kind of the different numbers and scores that this client scored on. So there's that barrier score of where they landed and regarding their barriers to housing. We have the vulnerability score, and even gives a little example of what each what it means to score. So for this case, it would be an adult only needs to score 6 or higher, and families need to score 10 or higher here. And now we also have this a VSB score, which is for the survivor side of it and where they would land as well. So this is for, in this case, it's a 0. So now we also have all of these different programs. So as Giselle mentioned, we have rapid rehousing, supportive services, and permanent supportive housing. So we have all of these listed, and it's great to be able to see like what programs are within the CAS agency. So these are all of them listed. So as you see here, it's the scores are going to be right next to each program. So in this case, let's look hypothetically for the CalAIM Enhanced Care Management. We're going to look at this score only. So in this case, the score must be 100 or higher to be eligible for the programs listed below. So in this case, they would be eligible for this program. I would like to highlight to please ignore the numbers right next in parentheses because that is not relevant to the scoring at all. You're only going to be looking at this column alone. So now we can go to another PSH program as well. Let's say Sunrise Point. We're going to look at Sunrise Point and see what they landed on the score. They landed 100 for that, so they would be eligible for this program. And same with the rapid rehousing. And I do want to highlight again to please look at these scores only to be able to find out where they land on that eligibility score. And then that's kind of it. So going over that, stop sharing screen now.
I'm getting there, y'all. Bear with me. Thank you.
No worries. So now we're going to go over, awesome, thank you, Jody. We're going to go over kind of what we just went over right now. So the barrier, the vulnerability, and the eligibility. So again, the barrier score is the overall housing barrier for that household. The vulnerability is the overall vulnerability score, and the eligibility provides information about which housing programs the household may be eligible for. So again, kind of highlighting the biggest question is how do we get into these programs? Is going on that eligibility on right after you've done the HCT assessment. Next slide. And again, we're just here to really implement that and hopefully gets really into your guys' heads. Because I remember I was also really confused as a provider, how do I get into these programs? And so we've done an amazing job. HMIS team has done an amazing job of having this be reflective right after you complete an assessment. Next slide, please. So the problem is there are, since this has been implemented recently, so there is sometimes where you'll get a weird, funky, and it's great to be able to see right after you've completed that HCT is that why are all of these scores 0? Or if you go back and now that you guys have done this training, you go back and you're going to go check and see zeros. So the indicator is to refresh the assessment to allow the processors to accurately provide potential program eligibility. So the solution is you just return to the assessment, toggle some simple things like trash bags or at the very end of that HCT. And this will then reflect accurately where they land on the eligibility score. Next slide, please. So we do send out email e-blast. So I'm not sure if you've gotten an email from the HMIS data team saying of information. Please take a look at these emails. They're given with a ton of information and any updates that are needed. So these emails are given with how to reflect newly onboarded programs. So sometimes we do go, the data team does go back and kind of changes some of the questions on the HCT to better reflect the programs that are getting onboarded to HMIS. So we want to be sure that we are clearly getting across all boards for the programs for the clients to be eligible for. So again, an example is going back to the HCT, toggling a trash bag, on or off, or answering new questions on that HCT. So please take a look at those emails. Next slide, please. So we have a question. So your client scored 90 for a housing program. Based off of the eligibility that we just went over, are they potentially eligible for referral? So I see some no's in the chat. Awesome. So yeah, you are correct. It would be a no. Based off of what we just saw is that some of those programs need a 100 score or higher. So great job for all of the no's that I see in the chat, is that they wouldn't be eligible for that program. Next slide, please. So we also have assessments to the priority list, case conferencing. So this is more client-centered collaboration. It enables real-time collaboration and visibility between case managers, outreach workers, and housing providers. This is key information about client housing preferences, and barriers come from this section. So this CCT tool or case conferencing tool is best to be able to kind of highlight what the preferences are for these clients. Sometimes they don't want shared housing. Um, they don't want a specific area. So this is a great opportunity to highlight that information. Next slide, please. So assessments to the priority list is the HCT. So by completing the HCT assessment, the client will be prioritized by these three factors. So the vulnerability score, the barrier score, and the length of time homelessness is the tiebreaker. So this is a great opportunity to kind of have an idea of where would they land on the eligibility and the priority list for these programs. So it is based off of that vulnerability score and the barrier score mainly. So as we saw on that HCT, you'll get a reflective answer of where they would land based off of those scores. And then the tiebreaker would be the length of time homeless. So how long have they been homeless and experiencing homelessness? Next slide, please. So we do have different types of priority lists. If you guys are attending our CAS office referral hours, which is where we have a space of where the different types of priority lists are, we do give the general COC priority list. So that's a name by type of by name list that comprehensive lists every person in our community seeking housing. So it's anyone who's completed an HCT and where they land generally in all of the generally land on all of the COC side. And so we also have by program. So as you saw, the list of programs that we have is that we have PSH, rapid rehousing, supportive services only, and all of those different other programs. So we also have a priority list that followed by each program. So it's a curated list identifying clients from the COC priority list who meet the eligibility criteria for a specific program, and is generated daily, used by the SSF referral specialist to fill in openings. Next slide, please. So how do the priority lists are utilized? How are they utilized? So this is kind of like the graph of how it happens. So SSF gets notified of an opening. We have about 1 week to be able to fill in that opening. So it is a time sensitive matter. And honestly, it's really just to be able to get that household, family, individual housed as soon as possible. SSF refers to that priority list for that specific program. So it's by population, income limits, or homeless status as well. Then SSF further filters based on the unit requirements. So each program does have a specific criteria as well. And then based off of what the unit is available for. So it's not, so for example, in this says not connected to a pending housing referral, the household size, and ADA accommodation. So we do want to accommodate to the client's needs as well. The SSF process most vulnerable first. So starting from the top of the working down of the list and working down that list. We also verify document readiness, and that's just really to support that transition into the program, that they have all of those needed documents as well. Next slide, please. So what is the we have a poll. What is the prioritization order of the priority list? Okay, awesome. So I see the answers. Great job, guys. I see that the majority did pick the correct one. So just to highlight, the answer is the vulnerability score, the barrier score, and the length of time homelessness. So that's how we prioritize based off of those. So yeah, so next slide, please. I believe we're going to take a quick break.
Thank you, everybody. As I mentioned at the onset of our training, tech is always fun. So thank you for your patience. We will take a, I'm going to say a 7-minute break. So we'll be back at 10:40 to continue on. And in the interim, I will remind you that this training is being recorded, that you will receive a link via email, hopefully by the end of the week, with a copy of the recording and a copy of the presentation materials. During this break, if you do have any questions, we encourage you to use the Q&A feature, and we'll be back shortly. Thank you. Welcome back. I hope you all had an opportunity for some water or a snack or a stretch, some deep breaths. We will resume with our document readiness post-assessment training, and we're ready to get started.
All right, it is 10:40, so we'll go ahead and come back from break and start with document readiness. Next slide, please. So we have permanent supportive housing. This is going to access all the housing programs. If you have the things needed for PSH, then your client is eligible for rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, permanent housing, all of the everything. So you'll need a homeless certification valid for 90 days, a disability certification which never expires, and on that disability certification, it does have to be from a licensed professional. It needs to have the licensure number on that to be considered valid. We need a valid ID. birth certificates and social security cards for any minors in the household, a valid social security card for the head of household, and chronicity verified. This is through a third party, an HMIS mapping tool, which I will show you how to do yourself here in a little bit, or self-certifications, which can cover up to 3 months of chronicity. Next slide, please. So permanent housing. So that can access some project-based voucher programs and rapid rehousing. So this is going to be the same homeless certification, valid for 90 days, a valid ID, birth certificates for any minors in the household, social security card for head of household, and then we have forms. So a disability certification for those PSH programs. It does not expire. You must complete one or both sections. Section 1 can be completed by a homeless service provider, that is you all. Upload the Social Security income, SSDI, or receipt of disability benefit onto HMIS. Be sure to check that box in there. On Section 2, this one can only be completed by licensed professionals. Be sure to check the box and be sure, again, that that license number is written on there on that bottom right-hand corner. Next slide, please. So here we have the third-party verification for PSH programs. So this right here, you're going to have a agency provide verification that they firsthand witnessed with the client experiencing homelessness. So this can be somebody who, where a client accessed shelter, where they accessed meals. Any provider that witnessed a period of time can complete this and attest to the chronicity of the client's homelessness. Now I'm going to show my screen in just one second, and I'm going to show you how to complete the HMIS homeless mapping tool. So hopefully my screen is visible. All right. So we're going to go ahead and go to your client. We have a whole series of test family here. We'll go to mother test. And then you're going to see this little kind of fax printer machine looking thing, and you're going to click client reports. And then in here, you'll see a whole host of different reports that you can generate from HMIS. Definitely go in there and look around. But see the homeless status timeline, that's what we're interested in. So you're going to go to run, which is this little play button right here. And then for chronicity, we do 3 years. So going back from 3 years to this date. So we're going to go back to May 2022 to today's date. And then you want to do PDF. Oh, I'm hearing that you can't see my screen. Let me go ahead and try that again. Is that visible to folks? Okay, cool. Perfect. Just want to make sure that it's accessible for everybody. Okay, so when you go to homeless status timeline, you're going to go to PDF because that is going to be able to be saved. So you're going to submit under PDF with that 3-year timeline. And then you're going to see that it says 0 for a little bit up in this corner. She's taking her sweet time, but once she's ready, it'll pop up and then we'll be able to access it. And it'll show pending if you do try to click on it. And again, as Jody mentioned, technology.
Giselle, if tech is presenting an issue, we can go back to the slideshow and continue from there.
Oh, there we go. I think I just had to help her along by refreshing. So we'll go ahead and open it now that it says processed. And thank you for being understanding of all of the little tech issues. So it should manually open right here or manually download, and you're going to click that. If it doesn't automatically download into your files, then you're going to want to click this little download button right here. But you'll see right here, it'll block out times where they were accessing a rapid rehousing program, where they were enrolled in CAS, or potentially an FYI voucher. If a client has chronicity that is valid for PSH, it will appear as green with a Y. And you'll get this little color explanation on your report as well as the staff who printed, which would be you. I do recommend saving this as something that is acceptable within your organization for privacy standards, but still understandable to you. Otherwise, it's just kind of going to be a host of numbers that might not make sense. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And if you could go ahead and go to the next slide. A couple of these are just going to be screen grabs of what we just went through. So we have third-party verification here. Same thing from that previous form, where the start date, the end date, and the location of a provider who experienced a client experiencing homelessness. And then they would just use one of these little boxes here. Client accessed our services, witnessed an episode of homelessness firsthand, and they would then just click those boxes. Next slide. And here is what we just went through. So I won't go through every single part of this since we just accessed it. And again, you will get a recorded view of this. That way you can go through this yourself if you need to reference it again. So again, homeless status timeline, click the run button. Next slide. Do those 3 years, because again, we need only 3 years acceptable. And on that last slide, oh, sorry, Jody, can you go back forward one more time? Thank you so much. So on this slide right here, see those green Ys? Like we mentioned earlier, that's going to show that a client has chronicity that is acceptable for a permanent supportive housing placement. So really this homeless mapping tool is going to be your best friend for kind of taking some of the guesswork out of chronicity eligibility. Next slide, please. So this is going to be self-certification, which some of you may be familiar with. This is when a client self-certifies a period of homelessness. And a client is only able to self-certify 3 months. So we need 12 months for PSH eligibility. So a client can do about 25% of that. So you would just need to do 9 months of that documentation. It does need to be, again, within the last 3 years, and make sure it does not overlap with other third-party verified months. Otherwise, it won't count as additional months. And just would like to point out too, for chronicity, 1 day, 1 incidence of being unhoused counts for the month. So just something to keep in mind there. Next slide, please. So this is the homeless certification for all programs. It does expire after 90 days, so you will need to do one every 3 months. Please fill out everything. You're going to check the box and type of the verification attached. And provider or case manager, you are going to put your information and your signature there on the bottom. And next slide, please. We have a poll. Which set of documents can be used to verify chronicity, 12 plus months of homelessness? And which program type, or which document type, excuse me, allows access to all programs for your clients? And again, no worries if you get it wrong. That's why we're here and that's why it's recorded. So empower you with knowledge.
So we will keep the quiz open for just another 20 seconds, 15 seconds or so.
Thank you, Jody. All right, so it looks like the majority of you did get the question correct. That would be HMIS mapping tool, third-party certification, self-certification, and an HMIS mapping tool. And which document type allows access to all programs for your clients? That is PSH Doc-readiness. So good job, guys. All right, next slide, please. Verifying doc readiness. Next slide, please. So documents are verified by Sacramento Steps Forward staff during the CAS Housing Referral Open Office Hours, which are Mondays from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. The SSF referral specialists, and you have one here, that would be Elizabeth Rios, will verify the client's doc ready status and update the case conferencing tool accordingly. Providers can ask questions about the CAS housing referral process or any pending referrals, and it is only for service providers or CAS assessors. To get a Zoom invite, please send an email to referrals@sacstepsforward.org, and really want to emphasize to use those open office hours, guys. If you have questions, odds are like a bunch of other people have that same question, and you're probably doing the community a service by asking it. Next question, or next slide. So this is going to be the portion on the case conferencing tool that SSF staff only are going to input any information on. Only SSF staff can verify document ready status. Providers can review the document status in this section of the case conferencing tool, but this can only be edited by SSF staff. Next slide, please. Please remember that clients must have a housing conversation tool and be doc ready to be considered for any housing referrals that become available. Really big emphasis on that doc readiness, because I know that that's a big portion of what you guys do is preparing folks to get ready for the referrals. Next slide, please. Who can verify the doc ready status of a client? Give it just a little bit longer. I'm sure that you all have this fresh in your minds. And that is correct. The SSF referral specialist is the only person that can verify the doc ready status. The provider is the one who is tasked with gathering the documents, and we will then verify them. So a little bit of symbiotic relationship there. So for the next slide, I will be passing it to my colleague, Elizabeth Rios.
Thanks, Giselle. So now we're going to implement all of those document ready forms and kind of put it in practice and how that kind of looks like on our end. Next slide, please. So we have the essential elements of the housing referral process. So we kind of went through this already. So we start from the access. assessments, prioritization, and that's kind of getting from the HCT scores, verifying those documents. And then that's the referral preparation. And then we go to the CAS housing programs, and that's where we come in. So whenever there is an opening, we then start on the referral process of confirming with the client if they are interested in this housing opening, and then move forward with the referral submission. Next slide, please. So we're going to go over how that kind of looks like. We want to be as transparent as possible with every provider that is on this call and kind of share how we go from getting all of those documents, the assessments, all of that, and now how does the referral process look like? So we do have an example here is that SSF gets notified of an opening. We get these openings as soon as the provider creates them on the HMIS. And again, how we mentioned earlier is that we have about a week to fill in this opening. So we do want to fill this in as soon as possible. And it's really just because we want to end homelessness. That's our goal. So we do have an example of a senior PSH program that has one opening. It's a 1-bedroom. They can hold up a household of 1 to 2 people. And let's say it's an upstairs apartment and it's a non-ADA unit. So this is kind of what that opening looks like. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is kind of looks a little wonky and a little scary to look at, but this is what we look at pretty regularly. So we go off of the program priority list. So SSF refers for the priority list for that specific program. So kind of how we went over it earlier is that each program has a priority list, and we kind of go through that program. So in this example, we have a PSH senior program, and again, mentioned as it has a 1-bedroom, it's an upstairs unit, apartment, and it's a non-ADA. So we want to be sure we are accommodating to the client and be sure that we're not putting in someone who needs an ADA unit in there. So there are requirements for each program, PSH, rapid rehousing, supportive services that need to be met to be able to be enrolled into their program. So in this case, for this example, we have the requirement of a program that is 62 plus years old, needs to be chronically homeless and needs to have a disability. So we go based off of the population, the income limits, and the homeless status. So as you see here, we have a lot of subjects on top. We have the household size, the age, the target housing type, and that's kind of where providers like yourself kind of input that information of what kind of target type do they want to look for. Are they open to shared housing? And then we go based off of document ready notes. So as you see here, we have notes as what Giselle went over, where SSF is putting that information on there. So we do have, next slide, please. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth with that. So this is kind of how we further that along. So the PSH senior program, again, has 1-bedroom, the requirements, and we filter the pending housing referrals. For the pending housing referrals, the household size for 1 or 2 people. And kind of what I was explaining in the previous slide, this is just going more in depth, is that we do include the document ready notes in these. And so as you see, there is one missing. So number 11 has a missing. We do still go back into that profile and still review those documents to ensure that they do meet the documents that are needed for that program. Next slide, please. So again, kind of what I just highlighted is that there are some clients, let's say, as you see on that slot of the document ready notes, some of them are a little outdated. So you see that one of 9/18/24. So of course, it's been several months since that's happened. So of course, we go back into their profile, verify if there's any updates on their documents, and be sure that we do still correlate and reflect any of the updates. So if the providers like yourself have updated a file that's needed or was missing previously, we go back and verify that. And so even if it's not connected, like for example, the one on 9/13/24, line 10, it says PH doc ready and not connected. We still go back to that profile and ensure that if there's been a change where they are now connected to a provider. And then as you see, we do have some that are in green that says PSH Doc ready, PH Doc ready, and now it's just trying to figure out which ones are needed for that program and that meet those requirements for that program. And then note that SSF will re-verify any document ready status that is 90 days old or that is missing a verification. Next slide, please. So we have another example here. This is a perfect example of now we have two people who are PSH Doc ready, and they're right next to each other. So client M on the COC priority list is 128. Senior program priority list number 13, and is the first one for that senior program opening. And then we have client S that is 182, the senior program priority, and list number 19, and is the senior program opening for number 2. So what this means is that based off of us verifying those documents, which is really why we enforce and implement why we need to get people or individuals PSH Doc ready, is that as we're going down, we can have someone who's on top of the list and isn't PSH Doc ready. So unfortunately, we cannot move forward with that referral. So this is a perfect example of how someone can be 128 and finally we find someone who is PSH Doc ready, and then the next individual or family is 182, and now they're PSH Doc ready. So that's kind of how it lands, is that we obviously prioritize the person who first met those requirements and meets the vulnerabilities and eligibility, and then we move on to the next one if it doesn't work out. So we're actually going to go over that in the next slide, I believe. So this is kind of where I was going with that, is that the client, and we do always give a client choice. So the SSF referral team will send an interest email to the client's provider containing general information about the program and the requirements, and an inquiry about their interest in that opening. Providers have about 2 days to respond on behalf of the client for that interest letter. Otherwise, the referral team will proceed to the next eligible client. And again, it's because we are doing our best to provide a referral within that week of when that opening was created. If the client accepts, then SSF referral team will process the referral in HMIS. If the client denies, the SSF referral team will move forward to the next eligible client. So again, we do always give that option for the clients to choose whether or not they do want to have this housing opportunity, but we don't always, it's not a force, it's just we're giving them that choice of that opportunity. Next slide, please. So this is kind of how it looks like on HMIS is once the referral has been submitted. So let's say they do accept the referral. The referral will be generated in HMIS. And it's a great opportunity because you can actually see it yourselves as CAS assessors, is that the providers can see this in the client's history tab. You would just go to the client's history tab, go under, just go scroll as you go through the referrals, and the referral team also sends a confirmation email to the service provider and the housing program. So the question is like, okay, once I know that I got this interest email, what's next? Is that you would get a confirmation email and you'll get connected directly to that program. And sometimes you'll have next steps, or it's just a direct enrollment with that program, depending on each program. Next slide, please. So we do want to provide referral transparency. So SSF is responsible for identifying eligible clients and coordinating referrals to the COC housing programs. However, we don't necessarily make the determination regarding whether a client does get accepted or denied from that program. So referrals facilitate access to housing resource programs within the Sacramento continuum of care. And it is important to note that referrals do not guarantee housing. Both the provider and the client are required to follow up on housing appointments, application, documentation, and any additional needs. So once you get that email of the confirmation from the referrals team, it's now kind of doing that additional little bit more legwork of getting that client to that enrollment intake appointment, making sure that that program, if they need any additional information or maybe updated information that isn't reflective on HMIS, making sure we get that to them as soon as possible. And this definitely helps to move forward with the referral and have more of an easier transition. But again, we don't guarantee housing for everyone. It's just for sure, just get them there as much as you can, and the next steps that they need. Next slide, please. So these are the different kind of emails you can contact us directly. So we have the SSF CAS housing referral email, the SSF survivor CAS referral email, the SSF CAS email, and the SSF trainings. So, and again, these trainings are recorded and will be given to you hopefully by the end of this week.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you, Giselle. That was wonderful information. We are going to open up the opportunity again to answer some of your questions live. So right now, this does conclude the training. If you do not have any questions, you are welcome to exit. Please do not forget to complete the exit survey on your way out. We always appreciate your feedback, and it's how we get to improve these trainings each time. I read every comment that y'all leave, and I elevate your suggestions so that we can improve your next training. Again, thank you for being here. I do have a question that I noted for Giselle about chronicity. Chronicity. You did mention something about 1 day equals a month, and I wondered if you could go into a little bit more detail around
Yeah, of course. So when you are documenting chronicity, if a client was unhoused for 1 day in that month and a provider is filling out a third party, for example, that month or that day would count for a period of homelessness for the month. So if a client had, say, a period of like a period of housing instability, 1 day, 1 day, 1 day, 1 day, that could all add up to 12 months, even without a client being unsheltered for 365 days out of the year. So to put it in math terms, a client could technically be unhoused for 12 days once every month and still meet chronicity due to their instability, if that makes more sense.
it. It does, thank you. I appreciate that. We did have some really great questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to open it up. Giselle and Elizabeth, I'm wondering if you can see the questions in the Q&A and just maybe select one to answer live.
Do you want to go first, Elizabeth, or would you like me to?
Sure. I see one that I was just responding to is that, hello, I've been locked out and unable to log into a forgotten password. Can you please tell me how to resolve? So we do have an HMIS team. If it's still not being resolved within the day, you can always reach out to our HMIS side of it. And I believe I can provide that link shortly. And they also have office hours as well.
I'm happy to drop it in the chat for you.
Okay, thank you.
And then I also saw a question, are we getting in the side chat the usual link that gives us the slides with the golden markings to study better? And I love that you mentioned the golden markings to study better. You will be getting all of this information. You will be getting the slides and the recording, and both should have those little golden markers so you can pay extra attention to those information or those little packets of information.
I can tell you the PDF was dropped into the chat, I think up towards around 10:15. And again, look for that email that will share the presentation. And I'm with you, Giselle. I love that you like the bookmarks. Yay! We listen to y'all. Thank you.
And I can also answer this one too. Are we going to talk more about case conferencing process in future trainings? That is definitely an ongoing conversation. We're also going to have an SCAS 101 training in July that'll go over SCAS, the survivor systems side of case conferencing. Do you know when CAS is having any upcoming trainings regarding case conferencing, the standard side, Elizabeth?
I'm not too sure if there is going to be an upcoming training for the case conferencing.
I can kind of answer that. We are in development of 3 parts actually for SCAS. So they are literally in my development stage as we speak. 2 have already been completed, and that third, I kind of like the idea of the case conferencing because that has come up quite a bit. Like, hey, can we learn more about case conferencing? So I'll definitely elevate that to our team that is in creation right now. And I will be happy to share the registration links with you when they become live. 2 out of the 3 trainings will be happening in July. So keep an eye on your email for that. Thank you for asking that question.
And also too, just want to plug the open office hours because those are so useful for any questions. Any little like case management questions about how far a referral is going, the status of a referral, that's going to be your space to get all of those questions asked. And if you do have questions about more information on case conferencing in those office hours, they would likely be able to give you kind of a little bit more guidance.
There's
And
one more question here.
Yes.
I personally happen to live in PSH here in Sacramento. My residence is on the CAS list, and I could end up with a client who's eligible for the property where I reside. Would there be an issue with my taking that client through the process since I'm also a resident there?
So that is one of the little dual aspects of CAS is that a lot of our programs have dual populations where folks who are being referred to CAS and then folks who are getting into housing through like a more traditional or standard practice. So it's not necessarily like a conflict of interest due to these housing programs being accessible for folks that are through CAS and for the general public. I can understand that maybe a little bit of a lack of comfortability due to the close proximity. I don't think that there would be necessarily like an issue. I think it would be more up to your individual and personal and privacy concerns. Oh, you did get into your PSH program through CAS. I still don't think that that would be a problem unless it's a personal, like a personal privacy protection thing. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Elizabeth.
No, I don't believe so. I think as long as that client goes through the same avenues in the process of getting into that property and the referral process of it, there shouldn't be an issue with that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be kind of a little silly to gatekeep resources that would really help our clients if just because other people that may be working in this industry are also utilizing those.
Yeah, and definitely I understand the conflict of interest. The conflict of interest would only arise if you're favoriting this client into getting this property and not providing that to that same resource to all of the other clients.
And when in doubt too, you can always ask like your supervisor and just see how they feel about it personally. And maybe, I'm not sure how big your housing team is, but if it's a case that you can pass to another case manager, do a warm handoff to another case manager, that way they can handle it. That way there's no kind of potential for conflict of interest even coming up, then that's also best practice as well. And I see a question on homeless verification versus third-party verification. Would I, as a CAS assessor, be able to complete both of these for a client? If not, could another employee within my agency complete the third party? Yes, I believe that you can do, yes, you can definitely do both of those, the third party and the homeless certification. You can also, if you are not able to get all of those numbers from your personal experience witnessing the client, you can loop in other providers as well. For example, if you've been working with the client for 9 months and a previous worker has worked with the client for 3 months, you can combine those together with the third party, 2 different third parties signed by each of you, and that would add up to the 12 months needed. Chronicity is always one of those ones that's a little tricky, so whatever I can do to make it more understandable, I'm happy provide.
Thank you so much. At the moment, we don't have any more questions. We can.
One last one just popped in.
Oh, there's another one. Yay!
And I totally understand not wanting to get in the way of your client's eligibility. And no apologies at all. Again, you don't know what you don't know, and we want to empower you with information so you can then empower your clients, and it starts here. So no worries at all, no apologies. If anything, I'm very, very glad you asked, because again, there may be somebody listening that has the same question but just was afraid to ask. Of course.
Yep. And there's a couple more that have come in.
Yes.
I think I'm confused about whether periods of time spent at risk counts towards time for chronicity. That's such a great question.
So at risk, and also Elizabeth, feel free to jump in if you want. I am a yapper. For at risk, that does mean that a client is housed. So that would not count for chronicity because at risk implies that they are at risk of homelessness, but not literally homeless. And for PSH chronicity, it would have to be an instance of literal homelessness, whether that's at a shelter, at a transitional like an emergency transitional program, because HUD has a little bit of rules on transitional. But any case where your client would be considered literal is going to count for PSH chronicity. At risk will not, though.
Correct. And then you can always upload kind of what Giselle mentioned earlier in the training is that there are programs to work with that population. And there is an at-risk certification that you can fill out. And as long as they meet those requirements or eligibilities based off of that document, you can upload that to HMIS.
And please do, because there are a lot of programs that want more at-risk populations. And I think that there might be a little bit of like a misconception that only literal can be housed or served through CAS. And we really, really want to shout from the rooftops that you can be at risk and still get placement through CAS.
That's wonderful information. Thank you so much. Every time I get to sit as the moderator and like do the slides and do all the things, I always learn so much. I've learned so much from both of you. Thank you so, so much. Very appreciated. I do want to remind everybody, we do have 2 more trainings available in this series. June 3rd is our next one. We have a little gap, a week off for some of the trainers. The next one is June 3rd, and that is trauma-informed care, an introduction level, as well as understanding and preventing vicarious trauma. So this is more of the, we care about you, we want to support you, as well as you supporting clients, right? So the trauma-informed care piece is wonderful. And then the following and our final one will be on June 10th. And that is Introduction to Conversational Case Management. It will also include some motivational interviewing techniques. And we will go over briefly about how it helps with housing problem solving and prevention efforts. It's a really great training. And after that, you'll get the automated, thank you for being part of a CAS Assessor training series. Congratulations. Then you'll get, hey, we want you to make sure that you sign the user agreement to be a CAS Assessor. That was our first training, right? Then it will give you, hey, here's a link for the quiz. Make sure you check your spam. It might be in there. And you'll have 90 days to complete the CAS Assessor training. You do have 3 attempts, and it is a pass-fail. And as we have improved our training content, you're going to have these slides, and you're going to look for those little yellow bookmarks, and that will help you move through the work. And that is it from me. It appears we've cleared out all of our questions. Thank you for the SSF staff on the back end supporting. We appreciate you. I see you hovering in the background there. Thank you for being here. And again, if you have any training suggestions or like, hey, we could really use a training on this, send me an email, trainings@sacstepsforward.org. And my ears are always open and we are always here for you. I say it every provider training. My job is to listen to you and to provide you the trainings that you need to help resolve homelessness. Again, thank you, Giselle. Thank you, Elizabeth. And we'll see you next time, y'all.